forth. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, can you call roll, please?
Mayor Beagle,
I'm here.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Present.
Councilmember Behrman,
Present.
Councilmember Gotchel,
Here.
Councilmember Brendan Fox, Councilmember Sharp,
Present.
Councilmember Smiley,
Here.
quorum present.
Thank you. Changes or additions to the agenda as presented tonight. City Manager?
I have no changes or additions, sir.
Any from the dais? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. We have one set of minutes to approve tonight, and that's the minutes from the regular City Council meeting of January 10th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Any questions, comments, corrections? Seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the regular City Council meeting of January 10th, 2023. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Correspondence, we have no correspondence tonight. Moves us to the first call to the public. I'll read the rules to the public. They are as follows. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence, again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council, and all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Do we have anybody for the first call to the public tonight? Seeing none, I'll close the first call to the public and move on to City Manager's reports. We have two of them tonight. The first one is the departmental report of December 2022. Any questions? Councilmember Brendan Fox?
Thank you. I have a question regarding the water report. Good evening. Just the question, my question is on page 10, the results for Tri-Bar. It shows that plant 5, a couple of the samplings were unavailable. Why was that?
Correct. Madam Councilwoman, the labs fall behind sometimes on getting the results. They get the samples done on time, but it takes a certain amount of time for the results to come back. And I actually, at the time I had to generate this report, it wasn't available, but I do have the reports back in time now.
Do you have those results tonight?
Not here, ma'am, no. But they were very close to Plan 4's results. They were under the limits.
They were? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. They were off by 0.1, so there's usually a difference of, so Plan 4's results are 1.8 nanograms per liter. Plan 5 is going to be about 1.7.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My
Go ahead.
question is also related to that. I'll get a new movement. With the effluent still being at 9.2 nanograms per liter, it looks like the output of Tri-Bar plant is within the limits now, right?
Correct.
But the effluent on the PFAS side of it still seems extremely high.
Compared to our limits that the state is trying to impose, we are still low. But the plant effluent is impacted by what's currently still stays in the system. So if you were to go back and look at the data over time since this problem started, we have actually dropped a considerable amount. So Tri-Bar is not the major contributor to the PFAS at this point, but it's just the residuals that exist in the system. It is after all done.
It could be storm runoff as well?
No, stormwater does not enter Wixom sewers. I mean, you might get some infiltration, but it's not the way the storm water system is designed in Wixom.
So there are other industrial facilities perhaps?
Perhaps, but the majority of it is just PFAS being a forever chemical tends to exist in crevices in the concrete, in the pipe, and we would have to take a extensive cleaning of the system to remove every last speck of it from the system.
So residual?
It's residuals that are just leaching out.
Thank you.
Anybody else got questions for Ruben? Any other questions on this environmental report? All right, do we have any questions for the quarterly budget investment report for September of 2022? Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Stamper, you and I communicated earlier in the week about the general fund, well, all our funds, and we have about $51 million that we earn interest and growth on. And I asked if I was reading page 9 correctly of the report, where it says we had interest earned in the entire fiscal year of 2022, about $172,000. And just in the first quarter of 2023 fiscal year, we had 3/4 of that already, about $128,000. I know we can't predict the future, but it does look positive for interest rates being about where they are for the next few months, based on my limited financial acumen. But, you know, having things in cash isn't such a bad place right now if you can get some good return on it. My point is to council and to the community, we can get like $500,000 of revenue just from our interest income for 2023 fiscal year. So we need to be thinking about that when we budget for next year, that we talk about tax increases and charter millage increases and roads and things like that. We can earn a lot of money for basically doing nothing and not taxing anybody anymore, because we're getting 4% or whatever on our money now, possibly more depending on how well our fund portfolio managers do. Is that, do I sum it up correctly, Ms. Stamper?
That's correct. And over the past couple months, actually our government pool investment has increased incrementally each month since the close of the September quarter. So summertime it was right around like 2.5, now we're at 3.5. So hopefully that'll keep trending in that direction, which I'm assuming that it will for at least a period of time. Unfortunately, some of our expenses are going to reflect those increases too. And our other investments that are in longer term, some of those, it depends on the expiration. Some, they're expiring anywhere from year 2023 to 2026. So as those expire, they purchase other investments on our behalf. So we're favorable trend for sure. Better than we have been in a few years. So
Yeah.
been pretty good.
Yeah, I thought I was misreading the numbers there. It's almost as much in one quarter as we got all last year. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, very good. Moves on to the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda will be considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and added to regular agenda at the end of unfinished or new business. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Support.
All right, got a motion and support to approve the consent agenda as presented tonight. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have no unfinished business tonight, which moves us on to new business. New business item number 1 is a recommendation to adopt the Economic Development and Economic Development Marketing Strategy dated January 20, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Support. Thank you. Deputy Director of Economic Development, Assistant City Manager Benson.
Thank you, Mayor, and members of City Council. This is an exciting project and process to bring to a conclusion and bring before you all tonight. With us in the audience, we have Justin Sprague and Elena Moeller-Younger from CIB Planning, who were instrumental in putting this project together. I'll provide a broad overview of what this effort was, and then they can dive a little bit more into the kind of nuts and bolts and some of the specifics that come out of this economic development and economic development marketing strategy for our consideration and adoption and implementation. The general overview is that the city historically has an economic development strategy. Our current one was adopted in 2014. That was also done through grant funding, as this was a technical assistance grant through the MEDC. I believe that was through the Economic Development Administration at that time. So for this particular task, this project was to update that 2014 plan, the economic development portion, and also to develop and incorporate a marketing component to that, so that when we talk about the kinds of businesses that we'd like to attract, grow, retain, what fits within our local economy, all of those kind of pieces. We also look at how we project the image of the city of Wixom, what mediums we use to do that, and those kind of aspects. So this project brings all of those pieces together to help kind of guide this process. CIB Planning advised that we create a business and resident advisory committee to lead the process. I believe we had 7 or 8 members, including a couple of city council members who participated. So we began that process with the committee in the spring of 2022, and over the course of the last 8 months or so, we've been working through data, different strategies, discussions, and strengths and weaknesses of the community, which ultimately come together in this particular plan. And I'll invite Justin and Elena. They have a short presentation to kind of overview the findings from this, and as well as collectively we can answer any questions you may have.
Good evening.
It's on the screen.
There we go. Good evening, members of council. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight to talk about this exciting opportunity in this project. And it was as Drew mentioned, about an 8-month opportunity or 8-month process to pull this together. We had a great steering committee that worked with us to do this. One of the things I would like to sort of discuss was noted by Mr. Benson, is you had a strategy in 2014 that was the result of an Economic Development Administration grant to complete an economic development study. That study was quite comprehensive. It was heavy on data, heavy focused on industry and industry descriptors and sort of where Wixom fits in the big picture of industry. But what it lacked was goals and objectives. It didn't create a clear, solid vision for the city. And so we really wanted to do that in this plan, is not so much try to just sort of bring that last plan back up to date, but really use that as a framework for sort of where we've been, but recognize that it's time to look at where we're going. So with that, we created a number of new goal statements related to economic development and community marketing and goal. And the 5 are really establish a strong and cohesive economic development brand for the city of Wixom. When we say economic development brand, it's more than just a destination brand. It's more than talking about, how do we attract people to Wixom? It really stands for how Wixom does business and interacts with the business community. And it's really important to sort of, in an area of Southeast Michigan where there are numerous communities all seeking to land the next economic development project, it's really important that we establish who we are as a community from an economic perspective. And what that does is it allows you to start to identify what your key strengths are within the community, from your workforce, from your educational attainment and your incomes, and as well as your industries that are currently here, and gives you a guide to what we should be looking to attract. And one thing I always like to say is when it comes to economic development, you should never practice economic development by casting a large trolling net into the sea, hoping to catch something. You want to make sure that you have your data, that you know your facts, and that you can speak specifically to those investors that you're trying to bring into the community or that you'd like to bring into the community. The other piece of that is, and something that we looked at through this process, is how do we grow our local entrepreneurs and strengthen our small businesses. One of the things that the data pointed out to us is that some 80% of your retail spend is leaving the community. It's most likely going to Novi, but also goes to South Lyon, Milford, Brighton, and other area communities. So we want to really kind of hone in and harness our local economic entrepreneurs, help them start their businesses, grow their businesses, expand their businesses. Another little fun fact I like to state is roughly 75% of all of your job growth and expansion within the community is going to happen with a business that's already located here. So while it's nice to go out and attract that large golden goose and recognize all the work that's gone into redeveloping the Ford Assembly Plant and the new investments that have gone in there, as well as our other companies that are in the community, it's really important to take those that have spent the time here and invested here and continue to garden them and help them with the resources that they need. Another goal is to establish a more consistent, visible, physical identity of Wixom. So when people are coming into Wixom, whether they're coming up Pontiac Trail, Wixom Road, Beck Road, or just passing by on 96, we want them to know when they get to Wixom that they're in Wixom, that it's a place that they can recognize. So that's a goal. Create a vibrant city experience for all to attract visitors, residents, and investors. So that's the key there, again, is the word investors. We want to make sure that in all of our planning work that we're doing, we're recognizing that we're actively seeking investors and that we're going to be a participant in that. Support and retain existing businesses, as I noted, and then further diversify the mix of industry in Wixom, which will create higher salaried career opportunities. So we have a great base, economic base of employers in this community. You are bringing a lot of people into this community to work for those employers. But it is fairly unilateral to what those employers are servicing, or serving. They're supplying mostly the auto industry. And so we want to make sure that having manufacturing in the community is a great thing, but we want to make sure that we're also diversifying and serving other sectors in manufacturing, such as aerospace, defense, logistics and supply chain, or other high-tech specialty manufacturing employers. And with that, I know we have some things on the screen here. We really just wanted to bring this to your attention. As I stated in the 2014 plan, there were no goals, there were no objectives, there were no implementation action items. So we wanted to bring this to the forefront of the discussion so you can see that the city, the steering committee, and staff have really spent a lot of time and consideration into analyzing data that was collected and preparing an action strategy that really ties back into each one of these goals that I discussed. And so I don't want to go through these line by line, but I just wanted to make sure you knew they were in the plan and that a lot of thought went into them. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Elena so she can discuss with you the marketing and branding piece.
Thank you. Thanks for having us today. This is great to be here and go through this piece. And mine's not going to take too long. I think I'm mainly going to just kind of give you a wide, broad overview of what we did with the steering committee, which was extremely helpful. By the way, the steering committee was excellent in getting us this feedback. That enabled us to move through this marketing and communication strategy for the community. And keeping in mind, a couple of things that we also did was we wanted to do an audit of what is already being done, and through our experience, I was able to see that Wixom has already a very good footprint when it comes to the website and the digital space that you guys are using to promote and at least communicate what the city of Wixom is all about. So I did find that Wixom is doing a fair amount of using a lot of tactics to reach key audiences, which is great, but there's also always room for more. So one of the processes that we went through with the steering committee, which was extremely helpful, was first and foremost kind of that identification of Wixom's brand. And when you think about a brand, a lot of people think about a logo. It's a lot more than just a logo. And so what we were able to do with the help of the steering committee through the SWOT analysis and through our additional meetings with the folks, we were able to set up what I like to refer to as kind of a brand platform. So in that way, what we like to do is kind of use the time together to walk through elements that Wixom maintains, including what we like to call the tangible benefits, the social benefits, emotional benefits, the personality, so kind of that brand personality, and then brand values, and then that basically comes up to a brand essence. So through those steps, I just want to kind of identify that those were some of the steps that we walked through with the steering committee and our team, and laid the groundwork really for that identification of the brand. We think that's important. So that was one of the first things that we went through as a committee, that I went through, and Justin and our team, to sort of set us up to provide, again, that platform to continue through that brand process. And mainly the recommendation that came out of this, based on feedback from the steering committee, is that, we have one of the things that is important, of course, but I think that, a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about this logo. It's, again, more than just a logo. It's about your story, right? Wixom's story and how to tell that story to the right people at the right time. A brand is part of that. But through this process, we also recommended or identified that, the city of Wixom, the overarching city logo, could potentially and should, in my opinion, we recommend putting together a steering committee to move through the process of potentially refreshing and maybe even reworking that logo. So that was one of the things that kind of came out of this process that we all agreed upon. I know that the City of Wixom logo was as I understand, done probably 40 years ago or so. So moving through that process with a graphic design firm and taking the time to work through that with some expertise, that's one of the main recommendations that came out of the identification of Wixom's brand or Wixom's logo in that process. And then I just also wanted to kind of call our attention to a couple of things because I didn't, again, want to go line item by line item. There's a lot of information here, but one of the things that we like to put together as well is kind of this quick and easy community marketing and key messages chart. So that identifies who we're talking to, who's that main segment, what are their primary interests, what are the outreach tools, and what are those suggested key messages to those segments, kind of those talking points that we can use. Again, these suggested key messages came out of the analysis and the process that we had with the data, with the SWOT, with the steering committee. So you'll see as you read through this is a good description, a good place to just have a, one snapshot, broad overview of basically what we can do moving forward and how we can do it. So I just wanted to bring our attention to that. I believe that's, I was going to see the pages of, that's there on 46 and 47 of the strategy. So I wanted to point that out to everybody, and also a lot of the implementation steps, again, are within these charts throughout the strategy. These all, again, came from our interaction with the steering committee. We have the goal on the left, the action item, the example activities, responsible parties, time frame, and potential budget when we get to that point. A lot of the information as well is explained in further detail. I've kind of highlighted some of this information in yellow, where you can see one of the steps being enhanced communications to promote city-based and partner-hosted entrepreneurship and small business development programs, so on and so forth. Those indicate areas where there's going to be more information that's detailed within the strategy itself. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well. All right. And really, that kind of closes up the broad overview of the strategy, and just wanted to open it up for questions if you had any.
Any questions? Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Thank you, Mayor. If you can back up a couple slides to the implementation plans and actions, the first one.
The first one was the support maintaining business.
Nope, I'll keep going. One more. One more. Where is it? Keep going. Here, right here, on this one. Things that was conspicuously absent from your target emergency industry clusters that I noticed is the area of mobility, where the MVDC in the state of Michigan and Oakland County are spending a lot of time and energy on. This area, Wixom and its surrounding communities, is and has been a cradle of mobility sector for many, many decades, right? In the areas of they call them the CASE technologies, connected, automated, shared, and electrified. I mean, our next energy is a stone's throw from our border. Waymo is a stone's throw from our border, right? These are the emerging sectors, and it was conspicuously absent from here. And when you talk to the young families that are going into our subdivisions, our new subdivisions, most of them work in that mobility sector. The other one that seemed to be conspicuously absent was logistics and warehousing, which is a growing area in this southwestern Oakland County region, right? With Lineage Logistics and in our own, Wixom Park here in the former Ford property. So I was just curious as to, do you not see those as emerging for our area?
We do, and it's really important that we tied this strategy and with Oakland County strategy as well as SunCog strategy, which have both been recently updated within the last 2 or 3 years. And we did talk about mobility connectivity, specifically with what's happening with the automakers, what's going on with MC down at U of M, and we have proving grounds around here, and there's a lot of reasons to be plugged into that. What the steering committee sort of discussed was the importance of industry diversification. So again, not just placing everything into the automobile basket, but recognizing that we need that engineering, we need that technical support of suppliers here, and they're already growing here, and we're going to continue to reach out and try to attract them here because you have an excellent case for them to be here. You are the central hub of the area for Southeast Michigan. So we did want to at least make sure that we were connecting this plan in with Oakland County strategy, as well as Detroit Regional Partnership, as well as SunCog, and making sure that staff is integrally plugged in with what they're doing.
And all of those, by the way, have electrification as one of their primary areas.
Correct.
So just, again, just maybe make that note. And, otherwise, I'm excited to see this roll out.
Councilmember Resnick, if I may, I just wanted to add one other piece to that, to Justin's point. It was less of an omission, is more of a, at this point, given the distribution facilities we have, it's sort of implied that, those kinds of businesses will come here. But when we had those conversations, specifically with the steering committee, was, is the hope that, that's a giant distribution hub, or is the hope that there's a variety or a mixed use kind of campus feel? And I give a lot of credit to CIB for bringing in the planning components that the Planning Commission talked about, what they envisioned for that kind of site. I will agree, there could potentially be a more specific note towards the electrification side, but just to add a little context there, we had a very thoughtful discussion on that, I thought.
Councilmember Granlund Fox.
So I appreciate all the work that was put into this. There's a lot of information to go through. So the key, the action items that you have listed here that indicate the timeline of 1 to 3 years, are they prioritized as far as those specific action items that you believe the city should work on first?
So we did not prioritize them or rank them. We worked quite a few hours on this implementation chart with staff, specifically Mr. Benson and Laura, the DDA, to determine what the staff capacity was to be able to take on these types of projects, because we knew there was going to be a lot of their effort. And in fact, one of the recommendations that came out of it was potentially looking to hire a marketing specialist that can be a staff to help just drive the economic marketing of the city. But we figured at this point, each one of these projects has some level of priority in itself, and so that staff would spend the next several weeks and months trying to figure out what they would like to tackle first. And again, we did recommend that there continue to be an advisory business committee, sort of the steering committee that has worked on this project, that can work with staff to determine what that prioritization should look like.
Okay. And then as far as the budget component, I noticed that there's no budget component to any of these action items.
Correct.
So it's hard for council, especially going into the budget season, to be able to prioritize and figure out what we need to do and what we can afford to do as far as the timeline.
No, I agree, and that would be something that is discussed, that will come from staff as they determine which of these projects they would like to take on within the next 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. A detailed implementation strategy would be brought to the council.
Now, does your group help staff determining what that budget will look like?
At this point, we would not. Our involvement in this through the MEDC grant would conclude upon council's adoption. But to request to the city if they would like our assistance, we're always here to help. We can talk about that.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
To add to Justin's point, part of the reason that we didn't, I guess, dive farther into the prioritization is because ultimately these will be decisions of City Council. The plan is to, kind of pull these tables out and adjust them in a way that we will report on this annually. And as you mentioned, topics that we feel like, we can pursue and having those be a part of the budget conversation, right? So really it will be a prioritization by City Council. As an example, I would say probably the most frequently discussed priority action item was looking at the city's brand, our color schemes, our fonts. You'll see in the package there's the example kind of brand guidelines. And we went back and forth on that a lot. And so the word example is very important there, right? That we're suggesting what a brand guideline would look like, but this project is not saying that those are what should be adopted going forward. So the suggestion to do that kind of process and tying that into gateway signage and how we better define the boundaries and what is Wixom, that's probably
that was a big part of the discussion, was the wayfinding and just entryway signage, making sure that when people come into the city, they know they're in the city. That was a major focus of the city committee.
Yeah.
So
And
we
have that be
will bring that, we're still sort of synthesizing a little bit on our end, but the hope and the plan really is to have at least some portions of this being a part of our budget discussions this year, and then really upon council and potentially, the DDA board's recommendations of which aspects they would like to. Some of these things aren't expensive or don't require city council involvement. Some are larger, so we need to mold that a little, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you bring those to council, that will have the budget piece or the anticipated cost analysis?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
And we've had discussions in the past about replacing the entry signage into the city and stuff like that. We've done that a few times, so.
Well, and that was a big part too, is taking comments and things that have come up over the course of time and trying to incorporate them as discussion points and ultimately as action items in here. There's all sorts of things that we've talked about that, felt like they had a place in here, and other people mentioned them. So this was to try to codify those concepts in some way without, forcing you to sign off and say, we're doing that tomorrow.
Councilmember Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I was impressed by the thoroughness of it. I was like, who did all this work? And it's in there, who did it all. But I'd kind of forgotten that CIB had been hired as a special project by the city to do this as part of our RRC ongoing initiative. And I did saw in there's a lot more that needs to be done for RRC training and things of that nature on how to be an RRC city, as well as just talk about it. We actually have to do it. And I had a couple of notes, a couple of comments on my own, things that I thought would be good, but I don't know that I need to go through those here. Other than I really liked crossroads of work and play. I thought that really fit us for the train going through and the airline trail, et cetera, and other things that we have. We read Deanna McGee's report about the disc golf and pickleball and all those things we have as part of the play aspect. I think we're probably as good as anybody at a variety of things we have there. I thought the SWOT analysis was honest, which was nice to read. I know that you got to take that and act on it now, but I felt like the committee had been honest with themselves and with the community on our weaknesses, and we do have a few. But some of those could be positives too in terms of attracting businesses. I thought got money was one. Got milk, we got money. And I don't want people coming in thinking, oh, you got low taxes, but we're going to raise them on them. That might be one aspect we could go after, saying we got low taxes and we're going to keep them low, charter millage. But the main thing I wanted to ask was, because CIB wrote this, and as they indicated here, they're kind of concluded when we adopt it, has Carlisle Wortman looked at this, and what's their feedback on the
No, this
Economic development proposal.
This document doesn't directly, I guess, overlap in the, let's say, the master planning process or the zoning ordinance process per se. So no, they haven't been involved in this document. Really where they would get involved, this is one thing I give CIP planning credit for, is that they have a little bit more diversity on the marketing and the communication side of things. That's not something that currently we ask Carlisle Orphan to do for us or to be involved with. So really, I would say the number one thing they would get involved with as an outcome of this is when we talk about things like design standards. We have them for downtown, we have them for the GPUD district. Looking at those again, I don't think we've looked at those wholeheartedly since they were adopted in 2004 and 2009 respectively, right? So that's really where they would come in on something like this. Does that make sense?
It does, but I feel like, we're going to adopt it, then you're going to lay it on their desk.
No, ultimately, this document is, from a staff perspective, is most the responsibility of Laura and myself. That is who's responsible for taking this document, reporting on it annually, looking at it, and trying to incorporate those into the actions and things that we do. Even beforehand, with CIP on the planning, the general retained services aspect, we wouldn't have asked them to take this and, hey, make sure we're implementing these right. That's city staff's responsibility, if that answers your question.
It does. Basically, Carlisle Workman hasn't provided any feedback, so that answered my question. I guess I'm concerned about that, but you did answer my questions. That's all I have. Thank you.
Well, if I can just add in a little bit more on that, I wouldn't be particularly concerned about that because the planning function isn't to move forward with this kind of an economic branding and marketing kind of a strategy. The city kind of needs to establish that, and then the planning function would allow us to maintain consistency with that as we continue to develop and redevelop the community. But it's not going to be somebody that would be in the implementation phase on this marketing and branding kind of thing. It's just a different function, right? So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I don't anticipate that they're going to be involved further with the actual implementation either, because it doesn't really fit within their bailiwick, and they don't have people on staff. If Drew had a staff of 5 working for him, then that's whose desk it would end up on. But because we don't, it's going to end up on Drew's desk to start the process of implementing that. One of the things that was mentioned was hiring a marketing coordinator. That's something that we could consider. And that person would be a key part of the team that would do that if we were to make that move, right, hypothetically. I'm not suggesting that's going to be something we ask for, but that's something that was identified in the study, if you will. So it is totally a different function for the planning function. It really is. So I don't anticipate involving them just because it's just outside of their bailiwick. As I said, once we get things figured out and get it established and start building towards all these different goals that are outlined here, that's when the planning function needs to be consistent with those things when they're working with us to evaluate proposals and things like that.
Well, and even more so to add to your point, this document, when we talk about economic development, really, we talked about the targeting of emerging clusters and the types of businesses that we look to attract. They're really reflections of what we plan for. So when planning commission and city council, by extension, you adopt plans, you adopt ordinances, you adopt design standards, a plan like this should be reinforcing what you've decided there. And that's what this document does. We've looked at what are our design standards, what do we require, what the IRO, the Industrial Research Office zoning district, as an example, what are the allowable uses, the special land uses, and the not permitted uses. And that factors directly into what we're trying to attract and what we're not trying to attract. When we say we don't want mini storage in the IRO, it's not a permitted use. That's part of our economic development discussion. You know what I mean? So I would almost say it's the inverse relationship. Planning informs what kind of economic development you're trying to pursue.
If I may, I'd like to just add, at the core of this, economic development is really sort of 3 things. It's business retention, business attraction, and then community development. So your investments in your community, your investments in your school systems, your labor development, So really, that's what this guide, this plan is about, is how do we want to retain and attract new businesses to the community. Well, we do have some investment and development strategies laid out here, but the crux of the document is what makes Wixom great economically, and then what story do we need to tell, and then how is our staff going to focus on getting out in front of each and every one of these economic-based employers and having strategy sessions with them on how to help them grow and expand within the community.
Councilmember Berman?
Thank you. I do appreciate the time and effort that the committee members put into this project, and as well as you guys at CIB. The one thing that I thought for a while, and I really am glad to see you pointed out, was the consistent entrance signs throughout the city. I really think that would be beneficial. I was just kind of thinking of that. I mean, over on Maple Road is kind of like an old wooden one, and then some of the signs on Grand Pontiac Trail are like white entrance signs, and then I think over on the freeway there's a little green one. It'd be nice if it's just, even if we're not going to do something like a nice stone monument like Novi has at all of their entrances, which would be very expensive, just a consistent, similar sign that's everywhere. Either the logo we have now, or if it makes sense to rebrand and do a different logo, but make it consistent just so all the entrances to the city look similar.
Councilmember Smiley?
Thank you, Mayor Beagle. First of all, it's nice to see you all live here as opposed to Zoom. Thanks for all the work. The redevelopment ready certificate, according to our documents here, the adoption of this would get us to 84%. Is that just adopting it, Will, or do we have to do some of the stuff that's here?
No, the requirement is that we have adopted plans for economic development and for marketing. Functionally, yes, you are. And we will, but no, that to get the certification, you do not have to meet some threshold of accomplishing.
Sure. Well, not that we, would take advantage of that or anything. Just some of this will take more time than others things, to make happen, at least make happen correctly. So I know we'd like to get to that RRC, sooner than later. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank CIB for all their hard work on this, and I'd like to thank the committee members, the steering committee members on this, and I'm excited to see this, and I'm excited to see us implement some of these issues. And with that, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to adopt the Economic Development Marketing Strategy dated January 2023. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, new business number 2 is a recommendation to approve the concrete replacement bid from KD Cement LLC of Commerce Township, Michigan for 2023 concrete sidewalk/road repair projects in an amount not to exceed $300,000 and authorize the associated budget amendment. Motion?
Support.
All right, DPW Director Sigma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So last summer, if you recall, we initiated a policy to reconstruct sidewalks throughout the neighborhoods in Wixom. And part of that program was to do a 50-50 match with the homeowners for repairs within the subdivisions. We were able to get through Hidden Creek, Wildwood, Trails of Loon Lake, and about 3/4 of Wexford Muse. And we felt that this was a successful program last summer. And one of the things that we felt made it a success was the use of the low contract bid last March using KD Cement LLC. So we did look at reestablishing that contract for this fiscal year. Excuse me. And We went to Katie Cement to ask for pricing for this spring, and you see that before you. It was an increase overall, and this was primarily due to the new construction costs that we're seeing throughout. This was March, initial bids were from March of last year, and over the summer, concrete prices rose considerably, along with the price of fuel, and Katie Cement honored the price from March, and we respect that, and we're thankful for that. He can no longer continue to have that price for this new year, and we feel that the pricing that he has there is justified. We've worked with him now for the majority of the work that's been done. I think the homeowners have been very thankful and have responded. We've since billed all of the homeowners that have had concrete work done, and we have, I'm not sure exactly how much, but already 80% of the responses from the homeowners in payment. So with that, we want to recommend this for Katie Cement. We're going to be doing Loon Lake Woods, the rest of Wexford Muse, and some major roads sidewalk replacements with this new funds. Secondarily, we are also going to do some work on 12 Mile west of Wixom Road, where Novi had completed the Novi section, and then so that would be near the bank, the concrete portion that goes from just I guess east of Leisure Co-op as part of this, and then also a piece of Napier and some other industrial roads. But that'll be open for comments.
We saved money fixing the sidewalks on Hidden Creek, right?
We did. Yeah, there weren't that many.
There's no sidewalks on Hidden Creek. Any questions? Councilmember
Hillsborough, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yes,
Hillsborough,
thank you.
okay.
Hillsborough.
Councilmember Gatchel?
Thank you. Two questions, I think, at this point. The first, looking at the second page of our packet for the business, the table continues, and it has replacement 8-inch and replacement 6-inch, but 6-inch is also above in the bottom page 1, and there's different values. Like it says on the top of page 2, 825 from 2022 carried over to this year, and but on page 1 it says 825 becomes 930.
So those two are different. The two on the second page are for concrete roads,
Okay.
and the ones on the first page are for sidewalks.
Okay.
And the 6-inch for the sidewalks is over the driveways. So there is a small portion over the driveways that would be replaced with 6 inches of concrete.
Okay, yeah, the road wasn't labeled, the
No,
road and sidewalk wasn't labeled,
yes.
so I was confused why they were different. And then, being that we're not bidding this out, have we tried to negotiate any parts of this? Because like the root removal per foot of sidewalk being $15 per foot seems insane to me.
Yeah. So there were a number of areas that when they initially thought this through, they were thinking like one inch roots that they could use a sawzall on, and quickly go through. What they ended up using was a ditch witch, basically, and grinding them through, so they were getting 2 and 3 inch roots. And so it was a matter of identifying what was out there and making a price that is what it costs for them to do it. So it's a learning curve on that, on our part and theirs.
When it comes to something like that with the project though, how are we letting residents know what the cost will be? Because I would assume we're letting them know, hey, it's going to be $300 for the pads in front of your house and we'll split it with you 50-50. But something like that would be variable. They don't know how many routes there are.
So when we initially go through, we estimate that, and when we send the letters out, we call it an estimate. And after the fact, and getting getting the finished product, that's when we finalize that bill. We are better at that from DPW's side now, and I think we'll be more accurate in our pricing for this year.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if we've tried to negotiate at all, but it seems like when we waive bidding, which we're essentially doing here, and prices come up, I understand the inflation factor, but that's been abused the last 3 years as well. So we're foregoing our ability to potentially get a better price because we like you as a contractor. So I think maybe there should be some negotiation attempt with this contractor and contractors in the future. Thank you.
Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. First comment on, I think there's maybe a typo in that. There's no reason that 6-inch street wouldn't be the same as a 6-inch sidewalk. Every other rate went up, so there's probably a typo either in the quote. So two things, Tim, Mr. Sickma, last year's quote, I remember KD Cement being quite a bit lower than everybody else. That 855 is probably still relevant in 2022, and we might still have picked them at 855.
Yeah,
For
so
the
overall,
range.
they were just a little higher than the March bids of last year, but we did compare them, and with
that combined with the
that
fact we
combined
liked
with
and
these facts, we feel it's still a very
And
good deal.
is this quote, I see we limited it to 300,000, but is the quote good for past 300,000? Let's say we have the best year ever in concrete weather and everything else, and we've spent it in the middle of July, and we want to keep going. Can we get that same price through the rest of the year?
We, I believe we can. I would have to, I did not indicate the amount that we were giving to KD Cement when we were talking about this, so I'm anticipating this is for the construction year.
Good for 2023, okay. And have the bills gone out for last year? Because I never got one.
They did. Did we?
Sure it was an oversight.
Well, there was, no, I will make sure.
Thank you.
We were waiting for the
There were,
There's now a lien on his house.
I won't say we're perfect in our billing, but we did bill some that were not completed yet too, and those were removed from the system. So with the addition, we'll make sure that that happens.
I do want to pay.
Oh, yes.
Here.
No, that was an oversight.
Be clear. All right, thank you.
Tim, if I may ask a question, just a leading question for the witness here. You had calculated what an overall price increase it amounted to on the cost basis, is that correct?
Yes. It was just over 7% is what what we
Which
were
is
looking at.
pretty solid from what the environment is in general, and then in particular when you consider the concrete. So we recognize that we're going through this without having a bid process, but for a multitude of reasons, the quality of the work that was done, continuity of the project, of the program, the fact that we think the increases are reasonable, and also when you compare it, as Councilmember Sharp mentioned, to what we had last time around when we bid it out in March of 2022, we're pretty confident that we've got a good price here, and I frankly do have run into experiences where when you go out for bid, you end up with a worse price than you get when you don't, and that could be something that could be realized here, in my opinion. I think we have a pretty competitive price offering from KD Cement for a lot of reasons, and one of the main ones for me, from the standpoint of quality of the project and continuity and consistency. We had the project done last year, it went well, people were very happy with the work, and I don't want to shift gears to a new provider that may or may not be cheaper, that doesn't provide that same consistency and quality of work when people are going to be comparing the work from year to year. So there's a lot of reasons going to the recommendation before you. I recognize that this was going to have, the lack of a bid process on this was going to be of concern, especially when we have a situation where part of it is being paid by homeowners. But we've done a pretty good amount of due diligence here, and we feel this is a good deal for both us and the residents that would be subject to the pricing.
Councilmember Gatcho.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess when it comes, I'm not super concerned with the lack of bidding on this, and I don't mind when we reuse the same contractors if we're happy with them. Why go through the trouble if they're still reasonable, but I think it's always worth the conversation to see if we can sharpen the pencil a little bit here or there, especially since this is, I mean, it's taxpayer money, but then it's also homeowner money. So we're making a decision for our homeowners. So it's just worth a question, like on the tree roots. Can we call it $12 or $13? Does it need to be $15? Just stuff like that. So I don't know how you would even come up with $15 a foot for tree removal. That seems like somebody just said, what do we think they'll pay? Because I don't know how you quantify that. It doesn't cost that much of dirt devil or ditch devil gas probably. So thank you.
Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mayor Beagle. Does this fall into the classification of a no bid?
Yeah, we should have had
requires
language in there.
Sorry?
We probably should have waived the bid process language in there.
Right, and does that then require a unanimous vote up here to pass?
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Just in defense, I also had a question on the 50% increase in the root removal, but then I remember my observation last summer where my neighbor had a big, older, probably 32-year-old silver maple that was in front, and they tried by hand to get rid of some of the roots before after they had they were ready to frame the rest of it, and they did have to come out with the equipment, and it was 2 days later, because I was like, wow, they finished these other pads in one day, and they were cleaned up, and everything was gone, and then this one's taking so long. Why? But then I saw the ditch witch come in, and they did have to run it, so I was also questioning the 50% increase in just that one line item, but after observing what I did with one pad last year, I can see where they would have had to have increased it. For a 5-foot slab or whatever, it would have been, a lot. There was a lot of labor that went into it.
And new equipment. That piece of equipment is a totally different ballgame in terms of cost and mobilization. You're not going to bring it out to every location because you're not going to need it in every location, but then when you need it, you have to bring it out. It's got to be, mobilized to that site. None of that comes cheaply. So.
And there's also restoration after that because it's no longer a restoration of 2 inches. It's like a foot. And so they have to put in the topsoil and potentially.
All right, seeing no more questions, I've got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve the concrete replacement bid from KD Cement LLC of Commerce Township, Michigan for 2023 concrete sidewalk/road repair projects in an amount not to exceed $300,000 and authorize the associated budget amendment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Very good. New business number 3 is a recommendation to accept jurisdiction from the Road Commission of Oakland County over that portion of 12 Mile Road as identified in the agreement transferring jurisdiction and authorize the execution of the agreement per MCL 247.852. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Order. Director Sigma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're recommending to accept 0.31 miles of roadway, the 12-mile road east of Wixom Road from Oakland County Road Commission. This particular road years ago used to be an on-ramp to I-96, and since then it has seen less of observation, I guess, from Road Commission, and we feel that we can give our residents a better service by taking it over. And this, if you factor out the money annually for the Act 51, it comes out to roughly just over $4,000 annually for this. If you think back to the local road program that Oakland County put out, one of the reasons for getting or receiving grants from Oakland County was that the industries in the area commented on our roads, and with the open market or the the open area of constructability along 12 Mile on the Wixom side. We have several properties there that have potential for economic development. And when we identified that, one of the things that the owners of those properties said was, what are you going to do with the road? And there was some drainage issues, and the asphalt was needed there. And we started working with the road commission, and rather than go with like a tri-party type of an arrangement for this to pre-construct or something like that, we talked to them about accepting the road, and but the only way we would want to accept it is if it was looking pretty good. And so they were good on their word. They repaired the drainage. They replaced culverts down 12 Mile. The drainage has been much better. The property on the end, the daycare there, we've had 0 complaints over the last summer, which is many times less than what we used to have. So, and they also reconstructed the road. So with that, they would like to give it to us, and at this point, I think it's the right thing to do. So we're making that recommendation.
What's the Paisley rating on that road right now?
The Paisley rating on that road, as of when they did it, was 10. It does go down, and initially goes down to a 9 after the first year, but that hasn't happened yet, so I believe it is 10.
Very good. Councilmember Berman?
Thank you. Tim, what would you estimate the cost was for them to redo the drainage and resurface the road?
So that is hard to say because they use maintenance. They use maintenance funds for that. So they're similar to what they did here on Pontiac Trail. They use their maintenance department. So they did. That wasn't part of a reconstruction project.
So let's say hypothetically it was what, $400,000 to do Maple Run. Would you say that's a $400,000 project or more?
As an estimate, yes. I think that is just simply from the 2 large storm drain culverts that they needed to replace there and repair, and then also the drainage work that they did prior to that.
So now that they've brought it up to a 10, maybe a 9, assuming it's going to need some general maintenance, but we got what, 20, 25 years before we're going to have to repave it again?
Yep.
So at $4,300 a year for 25 years is just over $100,000. How does it make sense for us to take over the responsibility of this road from Oakland County if we're going to have to spend $500,000 or more, and we're only going to get $100,000 in return?
So again, the piece that was recommended was to do that for economic development. So we will see more construction there in that area. I think if you look at the master plan, there's 2 hotels and the potential on the end for another building there. I think that the city will find revenue in that area.
But I mean, no, I guess it's already been improved. I guess I'm confused at how we're going to get much more than $4,000 or anything that's going to justify us taking on this responsibility that the county should have been maintaining all along.
Well, part of I don't think we would have gotten that without tri-party money, and so if we don't do that now, we would still have to pay for a portion of that road each year as part of a tri-party road, which is how we work out the road constructions for Oakland County, with Oakland County. But I see your point. It's a fair point.
It just doesn't make dollars and cents to me. But
if I may, just to kind of echo Tim's point on the economic development side, the beauty of it being a city road is that we have total say over what accesses look like, how creative we're willing to be with the future developer, what they need to do to make sites work. Oakland County is much less willing to be flexible. Quite frankly, they're less responsive As a whole, whether it's on the development side or helping to facilitate things, if we need to do additional infrastructure projects, I know as an aside from the road, things like water, sewer, do they have sewer all over?
It's sort of way to the end.
I do know that there's some additional pieces that, again, being under city ownership makes it more flexible. In the long run, no, from a maintenance perspective. Sorry, I'm making an assumption on your part, Tim. It probably does not save us money, but it allows us to provide a higher level of service. Does that become, on its own face, an attraction value from a development standpoint? We hope, but it's about what do you want your roads to look like in your community? Yes, we get a couple dollars back for it. If we can increase tax revenue down there, maybe that covers the cost as well. But it's a service standpoint. That's probably the number one reason, at least in my opinion, that it makes sense to do. The county does not maintain roads like these very well.
What would be our expense on a tri-county basis if we were to not accept this transfer for the construction that they did?
It's typically 10%. I think on something like that, like our Grand River. Our Grand River cost is going to be $450,000 for Grand River, and it's a $5 million project. But they're also getting federal aid for that one.
I see the idea of it being ours and we can do what we want easier, but from a dollars and cents standpoint, every year at budget time, as we need to put more money into our roads, I just can't see why at this point as accepting this road makes financial sense. That's all I have.
Councilmember Smiley?
So along those same lines, can you give me kind of some pros and cons of, that owning that road and having that control, is it really that valuable? Because do we really want to be in charge of more roads as far as maintenance and Pazer ratings and all that? It's I believe what is it, 0.31 miles?
Yes, 0.31.
0.31.
Well, it's not too big of an area, but the economic development potential, is it that enticing, I guess, that it would really be a great idea to have that road, or is it more of like a, hey, we might wish or we might hope to have that control, but it might not be, it might not be a good payoff for us. I'm trying to, weigh this, much like, Councilman Behrman is.
It's difficult to say. I mean, no one comes to us and says immediately, hey, is that your road? And if so, I'll locate there. What they do say is, what is the quality of the road? That makes a significant difference. And I kid you not, just the visual appearance of how well your roads are maintained makes a huge difference in how you're perceived by people when they're going to look at a site, or they're going to look at an existing facility, or someone's going to Wilson Marine to buy a boat. But you couldn't quantify that. I couldn't sit here and tell you a number of what we get out of it. But
what's your gut?
What's my gut? I wish I'd have known we could have invited Wilson Marine to extol the virtues of how nice it is now that it's fixed.
Yeah, part of that is retention. At Wilson Marine, for example, there were rumors to the effect that they were looking around to relocate, and that may well turn out to be the case still, for all I know. But I can tell you that the quality of that road was appalling, and I can tell you that it wasn't going to get better anytime soon under standard relationships between us and the Road Commission of Oakland County. That 0.31 miles of roadway that goes to a dead end in the city of Wixom was going to be very, very, very low on the priority range for the Road Commission of Oakland County. And if it stays there with the Road Commission of Oakland County, I can assure you that, I don't know that it's going to last 20 years, I don't know if it'll last 15 years, but when it comes to the end of that life, I wouldn't expect the Road Commission of Oakland County to be very motivated to do anything on that again, because it got to that state in the first place under their watch, and now you're going to be exacerbating that with if the city refuses to take take ownership of the roadway, because that was the discussions with Road Commission. If you do this, we will do that type of thing. There was no formal agreement, but that's what the idea was. And you can do whatever you want in terms of denying it, but I'm just warning that it got to the condition it was in under the Road Commission of Oakland County, and there was a reason for that. There was absolutely zero priority on that roadway, and there will be zero priority on that roadway in the future whenever it deteriorates further again. And we'll be back in this situation again. Maybe you and I will be long gone, but that is going to be the situation in the future. I meant to say from a role standpoint, I intend to be on this earth at that point in time, but I don't know if we'll both be in this role. So that's generally just a point that I would make on that. From a dollars and cents standpoint, we're adding to our responsibilities without a doubt, and we just felt it was warranted because it's just going to continue to become a worse problem there if we hadn't done that. And we were going to start to lose people like Wilson Marine. If you're familiar with the roadway, it was in shameful shape, and it wasn't going to get better anytime soon unless something was done about it, and this caused it to be improved.
All right, that's fair, and thanks, that was helpful.
Yep.
Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. My mind is essentially in the same spot as some of the other comments about it not making financial sense. I know in the past I've kind of hammered on us as a city taking on new fixed costs, and this is a fixed cost that from a road standpoint is never going to be a net gain to the city. And if we already, with the road revenue we do collect, we can't keep up with our roads as it is. Now we add another project or another road into the mix to eat into the funds that already do not keep up with our current road issues. I have a tough time understanding why we would want to do this. Unfortunately, it sounds like there was some discussion about, hey, if you do the project, then we'll take over the road. So I don't like to go back on deals, but that wasn't a deal City Council made, I guess would be my justification. So it's nice that they did the road, but it kind of gets to the sense, I mean, you see the news stories, that poor guy in Waterford who's out filling potholes in his neighborhood for all of his neighbors because the county won't do the road. Mr. County Commissioner, the county is holding residents and business owners really kind of hostage at this point because they let these roads, and I drive through the neighborhoods for my work too to go visit homes. The roads are hideous. And you talk to homeowners and, oh, we were told we have to create a special assessment district and deal with that. The county doesn't have money. The county is way behind on what they need to be doing maintenance-wise. So maybe a few departments need to get funded less or not at all, and more money needs to go to roads because everyone uses those and not some of the other stuff. But I feel like we're doing the county a favor by taking this over and costing ourselves over, we'll say in 20 or 25 years, if the road lasts that long, we're going to lose a couple $100,000 in terms of the difference from what it will cost us to repair it or replace it versus what we've brought in. It just doesn't make sense. Like, we want to talk about, I mentioned negotiating, like we have tri-party deals. I'd rather do that, or I'd rather work out some agreement with the county that, sure, we'll take this on, but you're going to contribute 25% of the cost later. Like, let's work out our own bi-party deal or something, because it doesn't make sense to us. Like, we're already on hook for Beck Road, and we know what a nightmare that is. This isn't even like a main road, to be honest. It's kind of maybe in the city of Wixom one of the least known roads, I would say. If you tell people that 12 miles in Wixom right now, there's probably not a lot of people who know that 12 mile in Wixom exists, aside from at the Novi portion. So I would be voting no on this. It just doesn't make sense in the current format. If we can work out something that lessens the burden of the city, then great, but as it stands, why cost ourselves a couple $100,000 every few decades? I don't get it. Thank you.
Councilmember Berman?
Sorry, I had one more question that just came up from Keenan's comments. Is this completely in the city of Wixom? Because I know, like, Beck Road, we've always been confused at why it's all Wixom's responsibility because it's all in Wixom and none of it's in and Novi for some of the areas we've done stuff in the past. Is 12 Mile half in Novi, half in Wixom, or is it all Wixom?
No, it's half and half, but the road commission can give the full road to us, and that's what they intend to do for that .31. Now, that does not include the intersection with the light, so up to that would be a Novi piece, and then the .31 starts after that.
So we would be taking on the responsibility to maintain a road for another municipality?
So the portion of the road that is connected to the Wixom residents or the Wixom industrial would be serviced through that road. There's really not much on Novi's side because the rest is wetland on the Novi side. So there's no developable properties that haven't been already in place there. So it's wetland where we would take over for Novi. Yeah.
I like the idea better of working our county commissioners to maintain the road in the future versus us taking the road over. Thank you.
Tim, just a quick question. The sections of 12 Mile, the other sections that connect to Grand River, Napier, as well as on the other side, goes through MDOT parcel, those are maintained entirely by Novi, is that correct?
That is correct.
So
no, I think the concrete piece on 12 Mile near the bank is actually Wixom's, and we maintain that. And that's actually what we'll be doing with some of that concrete work.
What I'm getting at is the inverse is true as well. There are sections of split road that they maintain.
Correct.
So
this was a discussion point here as well.
And that's how we ended up with Beck Road, and they ended up with 12 Mile, the dirt on 12 Mile, and now they've since paved that.
Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. I was initially supporting this, but I kind of like Councilmember Gottschall's proposal that we ask for some better terms on this. It's kind of like somebody buying a Christmas present for somebody and then coming after the fact and asking you to pitch in on it. I don't think the council was involved in this deal to repave it and then try to sell it to us for essentially an annuitized $500,000 bill 20 years down the road. I don't know what that's going to cost us, so it doesn't feel like it makes financial sense. And bad roads don't seem to be an indicator of whether we can draw business or not. Just look at Wixom and all the construction that's going on in Assembly Park with one of the worst roads in Oakland County. So I kind of changed my mind. I'm going to not support this. But, I support the idea. We just need better terms. Thank you.
Councilmember Granlund Fox?
Just let Novi take care of it. Just tell them to take care of it. No. So I understand the concern up here as far as the money, because if you look at that, it doesn't make sense, right? But I also understand, coming from administration, it's nice for us, for the city to have control of that road, because the county's not going to do anything about it. I mean, Waterford was a great example. The roads are horrible. Well, yeah, take your pick. So, especially because it's such a small portion, once it does need repair, which who knows how long that's going to be, because the traffic isn't as heavy on that portion, our chance of getting that taken care of are probably slim to none.
Right.
But with that said, is there a way that you can go back? If we tabled this, is there a way that you could go back and try to negotiate some different terms?
We can always present it. They were pretty clear that this wasn't that they weren't very receptive to any more on that. I mean, they've paved that, and they've corrected the drainage issues. And
so they know we're at their mercy. They don't have to do anything about it if they don't want to, and yeah, that's.
But yeah, we don't like to put council in that position either. But that was I don't know. This was a long time ago. It took probably close to 5 years to just get just to get the drainage fixed, and yeah. And then after the drainage was fixed, it's like, when are you going to pave this thing?
Well, and at this point, there's not much else they can offer us. I mean, they're,
Right.
unless the argument is that we ask them to make a cash contribution to the city. The Act 51 money is the carrot that comes with a road. So, obviously we're hitting all that. I'm not sure that there's much else that we could ask them to do.
You can ask, the answer won't be anything different.
Well, because they know they don't have to do anything
Right.
else.
Right.
That's, in my mind, that would be the reason for us to take over the road, is just because, again, we would have control, we can take care of it, because they're never going to.
Right.
Let's be honest, they're just not.
And the economic development piece was always the carrot on our side as well. We think that it's the greater the possibility for development in that area, and that was one of, talking with the property owners there, that was what, what General Trailer left, and there was some talk that we were working on roads when.
Well, and even the folks down at the end trying to sell their properties, and we have had that conversation of, they're trying to sell them, and this is the best that we can do to help. But I want to say one thing, just as a kind of an anecdote. As a resident of the Bear Township of Waterford, I'm very aware of the issues, and one of my biggest complaints, I'll say this on camera, I hate living in a township, and there's one key reason why. Because they are not responsible for the roads. That's the only difference between a city and a charter township. And they don't do it because it's an expense. It costs money to maintain these pieces of infrastructure.
And you pay more taxes.
Their millage rate is higher than Wixom, but it's because their taxable values are lower. But that's, I say all that to say that is part of the appeal of Wixom, is that when you come here, you locate here, you make an investment, yeah, your value is going to be higher, and you're going to pay a fair amount of taxes. But, as we see with our residential neighborhoods, you get something for it. Your road will get taken care of eventually. Same with our industrial clients. And that would be the economic development argument from me, having some of these anecdotal conversations is, no, we're not making money on it, but it's not about making money, in my opinion.
Fight for the service.
I know a real estate agent who can help you out getting on with Wixom if you need to, so. Councilmember Gatchel?
Thank you. When it comes to negotiating with the county, I think that there might be a misunderstanding that we're at their mercy. The comment was made. We're really not. They have a duty to maintain their assets, and so it's whether we hold their feet to the fire or not about it. It shouldn't be a lengthy 5-year discussion to fix your freaking roads. To me, that's almost lawsuit territory. If all these homeowners in Waterford started suing the county to fix the roads would get fixed pretty quickly. I think there's just a lack of effort and oversight, maybe. But when it comes to negotiating, the things that I would be open to are maintenance contributions, like I mentioned, down the road as those come up. Call it like, hey, you're on the hook for 25% of whatever we have to deal with. If they want to throw in a lane extension over on Wixom Road down to the expressway, then that could be a part of the deal. I wouldn't mentally tie ourselves just to 12 Mile if we're going to negotiate with them. But I completely understand the economic development side of things, but even at adding, if we throw up a few new hotels or whatever might happen over there, that tax revenue still doesn't really put a dent in the extra costs we're taking on with the maintenance, I would say. So it's just, no, the goal isn't to make money when you're working in government, but we're also at this point asking residents to give up road money for their neighborhood so we can spend it on 12 Mile in the future. I have a tough time justifying that on behalf of residents and homeowners, I guess I would say. People want to drive to their house and know the road is good because when they sell that house, the road needs to look good. The amount of people going down that stretch of 12 Mile in the city of Wixom that are Wixom residents, we can probably count on one hand a week or close to. So it really doesn't make sense in its current state to me.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smiley?
Thank you, Mayor Beagle. This isn't something to feel good about, but I'm convinced that, without, short of a crystal ball, the county is never going to do anything more to this road. And, nobody has no motivation to be involved if there's nothing but marshland, wetland on their side. It's a relatively small stretch, and we've got economic development that we can do there. We're the only ones who really care about that road. So, without, anything else, that's, we should have it. And then just a little bit of a side thing, the RCOC and the county commission are separate entities.
Correct.
And, just for the record, we'd like to keep it that way for all kinds of reasons I won't go into. But just thought that was worth mentioning, since we have, just so you're on the record, we have our county commissioner, Commissioner Rahman here today. That's all, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Sikkema, currently, do we send a snowplow or salt truck down that area?
With the anticipation this year, we did, yes.
We did. And so if we build, what was it, 2 or 3 hotels and a few other businesses on there, our fire gear, everything else is going to have to be going down those roads, correct?
They do anyway, yes.
They do anyway. And okay. And how many buildable lots are there, Mr. Benson? Is it like 4 or 5? I think, right?
If you don't count the end corner where they have the display, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Give me a couple seconds, I can tell you how many acres too.
So my guess is the county was probably, that was last on the list to get plowed and salted anyway. Because
it was. Or it is.
And I remember wanting to go down there once to go buy something for my boat, and I decided to go north instead. Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we currently do it anyway. Thank you.
Councilmember Sharp?
I'll just follow up on that, just to clarify. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Resnick. I was going to ask the same thing. So we don't get any revenue from the county today to do any plowing, so we're not losing that revenue that we're getting. It's not part of the bi-party agreement.
No.
So we'd be picking that expense up too, as well as although we did it this year anyway, because somebody's got to do it.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Now, we are receiving local road funding from Oakland County for roughly $30,000 to $40,000 a year for improvements of industrial roads, and this one, for any improvements that we would need to make, crack seal, those kind of things. That's been a ongoing program since 2016. Each year they do give us that kind of fund, so there are those two. I know it's different than the road commission, but Oakland County does provide some funding for local roads for economic development.
Do you have an answer for us?
Oh, I do, yes. I forgot the ITC line runs there too, so I don't count that as buildable. 4 buildable lots, 7.12 acres. You could realistically fit a 30,000 square foot building in a single story. It was a hotel bigger than that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to accept jurisdiction from the Road Commission of Oakland County over that portion of 12 Mile Road as identified in the agreement transferring jurisdiction and authorize the execution of the agreement for MCL 247.852. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Mayor Beagle?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Yes.
Councilmember Behrman?
No.
Councilmember Gotchel?
No.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp?
Nay.
Councilmember Smiley?
Yes.
4 yes, 3 no.
Very good, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the new business portion of tonight's meeting, and we'll move on to the call to the public. Again, I'll read the rules of the call to the public. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence. Again, immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council, and all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Do we have anybody for the second call to the public tonight? I'll close the second call to the public and move on to city manager's comments. City Manager Brown.
Thank you, Mayor Beagle. We have city manager update that covers the work anniversaries. We've got employees from 1 year to 8 years, and I use the word employee loosely there on the one with 8 years. That's Pastor Brad Stilley as our chaplain at the police department.
Well, he does a lot for the city, though. So
I don't think he's drawn a check, is all my point. But we do appreciate his service in the police department, and he's at our high water mark here in the group for this month with 8 years. The other thing that I had is a compliment that we received for Karen Darling, an employee in our Construction and Development Services Department that came from a large engineering and construction company. I won't go into the full details of the compliment, but he was very appreciative of her efforts and how organized our office was in providing the services that we provide in construction and development services. And he made the effort to put in a nice compliment to her with an email to my office. We wanted to recognize that and thank Karen for all the great work that she does servicing the clients and working on behalf of the city of Wixom to do a great job for them and provide excellent service to them. So thank you to Karen for that. And that's all that I had on the city manager update for this month or this week.
Very good. Assistant City Manager Benson.
Just one an exciting piece of news. We did get a property transfer affidavit for the Heat Building. That's the older brick building along Pontiac Trail. So there is a new owner. They already come to meet with us for some preliminary talks of what kind of permits they will need. They're still in the exploring phase. Not an institutional investor, more of a kind of mom and pop retail situation. So we're likely still a while away from that building being fully built out and reactivated, but an exciting development nonetheless. And we've offered to help them however we can to make that project succeed. It will likely be a challenge, but I think they know that.
Very good. Council comments. Councilmember Grenlund Fox.
I would like to thank Karen Darling for her customer service efforts. That's always great to hear. I'd also like to thank and congratulate all those celebrating work anniversaries. And then I would like to pass along my condolences to Wixom employees, Coben and Starinsky, and the passing of their family members. Thank you.
Councilmember Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. No comments tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. I wanted to also share my thoughts with Sue Coleman and her family and Brian Stawinski and his family for their recent losses. And then on a completely opposite end of the spectrum, wish Officer Sherbarth congratulations on his retirement here. Unfortunately, won't be able to join for the party, but over the last few years since I've been on council, it's always been nice to see him at different city events, passing out candy at one of the most recent DDA events and whatnot when all the kids were dressed up. And he's always been like a smiling face on the city's behalf, and that's important as a police officer for the city. And it's just been nice getting to know him as well. So wish him well in his retirement. Hopefully he has some time to relax before he figures out what he's going to be up to next. So, thank you.
Councilmember Berman.
Thank you. Just echo the previous comments, the condolences to both our staff members and their families, and congratulations to our recently retired employee from the police department.
Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mayor Bingham. I just want to make a special thank you to Assistant City Manager Benson, for leading and keeping the economic development marketing plan, moving. It was a gratifying process, and I'm very excited to see, how it, continues to happen. And my condolences to Sue Compton losing her mom, and also it's Sergeant Brian Stawinski, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and him losing, his mom. It's very sad. Thank you. That's all.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Thank you, Mayor. My condolences as well to the families of Sue Coleman and Brian Stawinski on their losses this week. And City Manager Brown, can you give us a brief update on the communications with DTE relative to the December 31 power surge?
Yes, Deputy Mayor. The representatives from DTE and I just had our last conversation yesterday, and we settled on a course of action where we're going to basically get out and investigate this further on site at a few homes that were impacted directly by this. We've got a couple that we've got in mind, and then we're also going to be choosing at least one more. So we're looking to get out with multiple representatives from DTE, and then also we're planning on bringing an electrical inspector from our Construction and Development Services Department to come out and take a look at the wiring that's servicing the home, as well as the DTE wiring as well. So that's the game plan, is to get that scheduled. I have not yet managed to bring together all the parties, but I anticipate that's going to happen inside of the next week. So we'll be out to see those homes either later this week or early next week is what my anticipated time is on that. And that's where our next step will come, and we're going to try to get our hands on as to what happened here with this power outage and subsequent power surge of some sort that has damaged multiple homes, multiple appliances within many, many, many homes in the community. So, so far we're having a hard time tracking that down through the efforts with DTE, and we're taking this next step to get out on site to investigate further with multiple parties on site.
Thank you, and a special thank you to resident Miss Marie Smead, who did a yeoman's job of collecting data from over 100 residences in one subdivision, not including the other subdivisions that were affected by that.
Yeah, I've worked with her quite a bit on this. The amount of effort she's put into it is incredible, much to the benefit of her fellow neighbors and friends there in that neighborhood. So,
thank you.
Good. And I would like to congratulate Karen Darling on the compliment. It's nice to get these things, but everybody in our organization is like that, from the clerk's office all the way down to even people are smiling when they pay their taxes. It's just we have the greatest staff there is, and it's always good to hear other people give them compliments. And I'd like to congratulate everybody on their work anniversaries with the city, and my condolences go out to Sue Cumberland and Sergeant Stawinski on the loss of their mothers, and congratulate Officer Craig Sherbrooke on 25 years with the city, and he's surely going to be missed. And then for my fellow council members up here, I'd like you guys to put the second meeting of February and the second meeting of March in your calendars. We're going to have 6 o'clock before the council meeting. We're going to meet at 6 o'clock and start doing some budget strategy meetings and get that ready. So when the end of April comes and we meet for budget, we're going to be ready to go and get it done, and maybe one night again. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Have a great night. Drive home safe, and have a good week.